Hello, everybody. We're here with Francisco del Pino, the winner of our duet category, all the way from Argentina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. A great
Sweet.
pleasure.
So, Francisco, can you start out and just tell us about yourself? Give us just some info on your musical life, your upbringing, and what has brought you all the way to this point.
Okay, sure. Okay, so my name is Francisco. I live and work in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. I'm a composer and also a guitarist. I like to picture myself as equally both a composer and a performer. And even if I work mainly in the field of classical music, I come from a non-classical background in a way. So about my upbringing, I started out as a guitar player in playing in bands on different types of projects, heavily involved in with songwriting mainly. Not as much as the songwriter myself, but as the guy who would work along the composer, the songwriter, and come and shape the thing, like the guy who will develop the layering of the song, will come up with a soundscape to 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 shape the mood and the style of the songs. And I think that in a way that type of approach was what eventually brought me to study classical composition. And I still find myself very, I think that the world of the song is really what for me, where my sensibility lies and comes from, like the type of communication with the audience that a song establishes is something that I really cherish and that I always striving to achieve with my classical or notated work. So yeah.
Very cool. I remember when I was looking at your website, I was listening to the work you submitted along to some of the other ones, and I saw your stuff as a guitarist, but I also saw a lot of compositions for electric guitar, which I thought was great. I grew up as a guitarist as well. My guitars are over there, yeah, right over there. So I thought that was great, and the songs that you've written, there's actually a few of a few of them I want to talk to you about because I want to play some of them. They're really beautiful, and it makes sense thinking about the producing of kind of the vibe of the song and the layering and stuff like that. A lot of what I've heard in your music can be very sonic landscape. There's these beautiful intimate melodies, but it's little bit larger picture. There's a lot of kind of just sonic expression, just these big gestures instead of your classical song genre where it's the piano and the voice. It's a
Yeah.
lot more of a gestural idea of the song. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think. Thank you for your words. Yeah, I think for myself, mm, because of this love for song world and the melody, I am also deeply influenced by early classical music. Whether it's medieval styles or Renaissance vocal music. Um, and because of that I've been always obsessed with counterpoint and all that comes from there. I also work as a teacher and I teach counterpoint and I think that that is something that is really one of my biggest the biggest fuels for my work. It's really really important for me, and a lot of ideas I come up with comes from there, from thinking about the line mainly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to just briefly say that you're doing great on this interview because you're already answering so many questions in one response. The next question
I don't
Yeah,
know
we're
if
actually
that's
we're actually done. Great.
true.
Do you use your guitar when you're writing? When you're composing, do you have your guitar by you, or are you near a piano or on paper on a computer? How does your experience as a performer influence the way you write?
Um, I think it depends a lot on the piece, of
Mm-hmm.
course. I am a very bad pianist, so
Same.
even when I try to, I always try out everything I write, mostly on the piano, but
Mm-hmm.
because I want to really filter everything by ear. But it really depends on the piece. One of my latest big projects, which was a song cycle, that maybe that's what you were referring before, uh, was a series of pieces with guitar, viola, percussion, and solo singer. And from the beginning, I was involved as a performer in that project too. So a lot of that comes from me uh, developing ideas out of my own playing. But that's not necessarily always the case, because a lot of, even if that in that framework, a lot of ideas come from contrapuntal devices.
Mm-hmm.
So I will have a melody and I will shape the some polyphonic web out of this single melodic idea. And sometimes I don't even need to try that out, because I know what type of stuff I will do with the instrument. So I will shape that on paper, on the computer. I'm not necessarily playing it
Mm-hmm.
through while I'm writing. So it really depends, and I'm not the type of composer that has a fixed way of um, working.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on the project.
Could you talk about the piece that you submitted, your work for two trombones, maybe about the meaning behind it, the what you were doing at the time, and just the context and what
Yeah,
that piece means to you?
yeah. Well, it means a lot, actually. So that's why I was so happy to learn about this opportunity, and of course, so grateful for you to taking it into account. Also, a small digression I have to say, because I haven't said it before, I think, to
Mm-hmm.
you, Matthew. Thank you for what you are doing. I think it's really necessary and important. Maybe especially in this madness we are living in right now. It's, um, of course, I'm not talking about this interview. I mean, this initiative. It's I really hope the best for you guys. I think it's really powerful what you are
Thanks. And
building.
it wouldn't be anything without artists like yourself who took
Exactly.
some trust in what we were doing and were willing to share what you did. And you're talking about this time. I listened back to the piece again just a while ago before the interview, and
Yeah,
I was honestly, with all the anxiety and stuff that I'm personally dealing with right now, and with those around me, like that piece was really poignant in a way that it didn't strike me when I listened to it a few weeks ago, months ago, when you sent in the work. So yeah, I agree. It is a special piece.
thanks. So yeah, Rondo Double is this duo for this trombone duo. Um, yeah, I think there are certainly several aspects to it. Um, First, well, each time I start to write a new piece, this is sort of question for me about the medium with which I will be dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like not that much in terms of this history of the medium, but how it functions and how it usually functions, and what can I do with it that could be special for me at least. And this is especially true with solo works and duets. Because I always find myself interested in this tension between making a solo be a bit more than a solo piece, and making a duet seem like it is less than a duet, and like working in this tension between line and polyphony, and finding ideas within those boundaries. So, for instance, one solo guitar piece you might have heard in my website. In my website is it's called Oketus. So Hocket. It's a piece from the same period as the trombone duo, and it's basically a solo work in which I am playing against a loop of my own playing. It's really fast music, lots of notes, but there is no one simultaneous attack during the whole piece. It's everything is oblique, and it's certainly difficult to play because of that, because you're always like like playing, and I like this idea that you can hear that there are two things happening, but in fact there is only one line. And I am not saying this is anything special, but it's really what the type of idea that gets me starting, and that I find fun to work with. And in the case of the trombone duo, it's kind of the same and the opposite, because the piece is for two equal instruments that are supposed to be playing against each other. Sort of shadow self, one from the other, and it's always also mainly a Hocket piece. There are very few points in which they come together, so there is always this ping pong type of stuff. And I put in the score a note that they should be in front of each other and possibly at a distance, so you can really, be in presence of this back and forth type of sound. And so that's one aspect. Second, and this is related with the name, the piece is basically built upon a pre-existing piece which I love, which is the very famous Rondeau by Guillaume de Machaut. My beginning is my end. So the piece is in a way a palimpsest. And this is also something I really like to work with, in which I am not starting from scratch. I am not facing a blank sheet of paper, so to speak, but instead I am starting from something that already exists, and I am letting a lot of things out and erasing and sort of distorting some aspects of the piece, and finding new patterns or new melodic connections. So the piece is really the same length as the original, and it's almost like as if you are looking at it with a filter. So that's really an important aspect of how I think about the work. And a third aspect is really bound with the context of its premiere, because it was written. It was not a commission, but written out of an invitation to take part in a festival in the Faroe Islands. This very tiny group of islands in the North Atlantic. They run an amazing summer festival every year, and I was invited to. I was playing my electric guitar solo, Oketus, and I got the opportunity to write a second piece for two very, very, very awesome musicians from the islands, and I knew in advance that the piece was meant to be performed in a classical concert context and also in a sort of outdoors gathering, typical of that landscape. But to my surprise, maybe this was not a coincidence, but they have this series within the festival that they call Concerto Grotto, which are concerts that occur inside a sea cave. So inside in a cave inside a mountain in the middle of the Atlantic, that they go into in boats, and they are very the gatherings of very small groups of people, but the concert happens in a completely natural environment surrounded by water. What's more interesting for this piece is that the reverberation there, the natural reverberation there, is, I don't remember if it's like 9 or 10 seconds.
Oh wow!
So they take you in some small boats, and you come out of this boat and you enter these little kayaks to enter the mountain. It's really slippery and kind of sort of scary at the beginning, but so nice. And unfortunately, there's no video footage of that because I wasn't prepared. It was a surprise for me. They said, "Okay, you are asking for this distance between the performers, this huge sound, this ping pong sort of stuff. We are playing the piece in the cave." So for me, it was super unexpected, but and the performance, there is a recording, an audio recording, very noisy because you hear the water and the people that, but the sound is a sort of natural cathedral sound. It's so beautiful, and this, of course, the piece was already written, but when it happened, I found out that this was the type of sound that I had in my head when I was writing the piece. So in a sense, it was complete when it happened there, you know. And for me, it's like, yeah, this is what the piece was about. So,
oh, that sounds like such an incredible experience, and I can't even imagine what that must have been like to be there in person. Thank you for sharing that. I just think it's so amazing how the whole point of this initiative is so we can go out and hear those experiences from people like you and everybody else who entered and submitted. The music exists, and we're just trying to uplift it so that people who are interested in it can hear it. And there's incredible stories and experiences just like that one. So in order to kind of segue into the next question, I'm wondering, what does the classical music scene look like there in Argentina where you are? I know that you have music played all over the world, and you've traveled to so many different places, but can you talk a little bit about education there and performances and anything else along those lines?
Yeah, sure. I think I could. I don't know if I have anything interesting things to say, but I could talk for hours because it's really a subject. About the scene, I have to say, of course, it's really difficult because we are always struggling with a very weak economic structure, and that impacts, of course, culture and music in particular. So, for instance, for composers, I have to say, paid commissions are rare. Well-paid commissions are even more rare. Somehow things happen anyway, and there is a lot happening, especially in Buenos Aires. And what's more interesting maybe is that there is really a lively scene of young people wanting to become a composer, but like huge, and I see it all the time, and that's really fascinating for me because it's kind of it's a miracle. I mean, in a way, the country has nothing to offer you as a composer, but there's so many people wanting to do that. A lot of to think about why that might be, but to sum up, it's a very lively scene with all these struggles against the lack of support and the lack of proper official structures for contemporary music. But
so then, what would you say if you were able to completely change what you could? What systems would you put in place in Argentina that would make things easier for people to get into classical music, easier for people to have their voices heard? In a way, what would be a few, I was going to say basic changes, that's almost redundant, or oxymoronic actually. What would be the things you would do to make Argentina a better place for music for everyone?
Yeah, it's really it's really hard to say, and I'm not sure I am the best person to think about this stuff. I want to sound. I don't want to sound like too critical, but there is always been some aspect here that is a traditional aspect, which is this fascination for what comes from abroad, especially from Europe. This fascination with Paris tradition, for instance, is really heavy. It has a really heavy impact on the way the knowledge is transmitted on conservatories and the way information is spread within the classical world, and it's really something that it's not something from the past. Some very important Argentinian institutions sometimes it's sort of like they are inviting people to leave the country, because they organize these festivals of composers who live abroad. And I always think, like, I mean, we have very little resources. Why don't you acknowledge the people who stay? Because it's much more difficult to stay than to leave. And so one thing I could say is I wish that at a certain point these resources, which are often very few, will be devoted to showcase more of the work of national composers and performers, and those who are really struggling with the fact that we are trying to build an own voice, But yeah, that's one idea.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. There's a lot of differences between different places, obviously, and different experiences. And it's awesome that you bring up identity within Argentinian music. So that kind of brings me to probably our last question. I'm wondering what's next. Can you give us the inside scoop for what's next for Francisco del Pino?
Yeah, sure. But right now, I am working in another duet, and so dealing with the same ideas that we were discussing. I am writing a piece for a saxophone and percussion, which is for an American duet. They are based in Georgia. Spoke with them a couple of hours ago. This song cycle I mentioned before, we made a studio recording of that. We were working on the final stages of the mixing when quarantine stopped us from moving forward, but I am yeah, so I am really looking forward to finish that, and looking for ways to put it out. It's a work that's really important for me, because it's sort of a point of reunion of very different, musical selves. Not only because I am also performing there, but because of it's the first time that I really uh, decided to to work again with the song medium, but from a from a notated point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I am really happy with everything that happened with that uh, project. So this will be an album that it will be out there at some point, and I'm really looking forward to be able to finish the project, and move forward with that. Yeah, and I also can mention this is medium term, because it has a premiere uh, date between.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's everything is so uncertain right now. But for fall 2021, I had a commission to write a piece for choir and guitar, classical guitar, for an stupendous guitar player from UC Colorado, Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a project that I am really excited about. So that's like the next thing that I have to plunge into.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Francisco. It was great to finally meet you and to talk about your music. If you want to listen to all the things that we've been talking about, you can visit Francisco's website at the website that will be somewhere on this screen. We look forward to being able to share more of this, more of your art, and especially when that album comes out, we'll
Yeah.
do our minimum to talk about it on Facebook. But thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.